Who Watches the Rewatchers, a Buffy rewatch podcast.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to Who Watches the Rewatchers. I'm Jarrod, and I'm with my friend Alan. We are rewatching the Buffy the Vampire Slayer series, and we are on episode number 4 of season 1, Teacher's Pet. We're just walking through this show together, not just out of nostalgia, but that's certainly part of it. But we want to look at this great piece of storytelling to pick it apart, see what it's saying about culture, life, and all things that are important to us. Alan, how you doing today?
Doing great, man. I'm this is actually one of the ones that I think is super weird in the first season. I know some people love it and some people hate it, so I'm looking forward to seeing what you think. Yeah,
it is weird. I was just perusing, which we use incorrectly, by the way. Perusing does not mean a shallow or quick reading; it means a deep reading.
Oh, interesting. I did not.
Yeah, but I was perusing Wikipedia's page on it, and I was cracking up at the rankings, because some people have done rankings of all the Buffy shows, and this ranked 132 out of 144 by Vox. So not a highly rated show episode according to Vox. But yeah, it's a little interesting. It's called Teacher's Pet, and it cracks me up actually, because I do remember going through male adolescence, and it really plays on male adolescent feelings in school, but also I think some tropes that were a little tired, even as this show got to it, which is kind of like the trope of the attractive teacher and attracting the attention perhaps of some high school boys and all that. But yeah, there's a little bit more to it than just the attraction. So
sure.
Yeah. So anyway, what'd you think of it just as a first once over? You felt it was weird, you said?
No, I mean, I think that this is, it's definitely a weird episode, but it's because it's a Monster of the Week episode, and the monster in this case is a giant praying mantis, and
yeah.
and that is so unlike, the vampires and witches and zombies and all the other sort of horror tropes that they've got going on in Buffy, that I think that this one definitely definitely stands apart. But I think all of the Xander focused episodes stand apart.
Yes, and so I'll say it was definitely a Monster of the Week episode that tried to do a little service to the greater vampire mythology. I think it reaches. I mean, there's a vampire in it, and it's a weird way to connect with Angel.
Sure.
And I too love a good. I find a Xander episode, especially when he's humiliated, to be quite good or quite funny, because they do that so well.
Yeah.
But when I was attracted to the show, I was just reading here on this Wikipedia page about it. It said that the original airing of the show. Let's see here. I'm just gonna find it real quick. It said 2 million. It debuted March 24th, 1997 on the WB, and it pulled an audience of 2 million households. And I was one of them. I remember watching this. I put my VHS tape in, hit record, and it was going to record that and Dawson's Creek and other shows as I went off to go do some evening practice. And I came back and I fast forward through all the garbage stuff I had to record to get to the episode. And I will say that I was attracted to watching Buffy from the early ads, because at that time in my life, and to this day, I am interested in the concept of the vampire. I'm drawn to vampire stories more than perhaps more than like a zombie story. So yeah, I was always wanting to get to vampire stories, and this was one that praying mantis monster was the main thing. But,
all right, let me ask you this really quickly. What is it about vampire stories in particular that you like?
Okay. I remember when I was a kid. So there's this guy who wrote this book named Lent Hatcher, and I saw him at a festival once. And this festival was a music and arts festival, and there was a tent called the Imaginarium, which focused on sci-fi and horror and storytelling, and they would bring in speakers and I remember they brought in a professor of literature who did kind of talks about the early Universal monster movies, the Dracula,
sure,
Stein and those, and, and he would talk about the roots in German Romanticism, and I find that's where I was attracted during this big festivals to that tent.
Sure.
And Lint Hatcher was a speaker at this thing, and he wrote a couple of little books. I think they were self-published even, but he had this kind of winsome way and said that in this one book, The Magic 8-Ball Test or something to that effect is the name of the title of it. He said that he was born with the spooky gene.
Right.
And just in his self-description of himself, I just resonated because maybe it's because my birthday's in the midst of October, or it's because me and my mom, when she threw me birthday parties, we always dressed up for Halloween, or maybe because at Halloween time we decorated a lot, or maybe it's because my mom liked it. But I've always been attracted to spookier things. If there's a ghost hunters type show on TV, I kind of attracted to it. Halloween time, since I was a kid, I love looking down the Halloween aisle of the store. And now I take my kids to Halloween stores just as kind of a thing to do, just for funsies.
Sure.
I'm attracted. So when I was a little kid, I saw some of those old Universal monster things on there's that tradition of television programs that focused on orphans. And, Elvira is the one that was big when I was a kid, but they date the 50s. And then there was this character on USA, Captain something or other, and he would show these creature features, and they were on when I was littler, and I'd see him, and I was drawn to Bela Lugosi's Dracula, his kind of cool, sophisticated looking guy in a Gothic castle. That image attracted me. Then his seeming power without a great exertion of force, it's like kind of had that mind power, that lure. That was cool. And then the more I kind of, as I got older, I was attracted to other elements. I think vampires are easy to make sexy and attractive and hip, and that's kind of cool when you're a teenager or whatnot. But I think underlying all of it, the fear aspect of what a vampire can be that's interesting is that it's this sort of a parasitic thing that can drain slowly into your life, and at worst scenario turn you into the monster. I think that is a fear that touches me in some ways. That I understand there's all kinds of great metaphors around zombieism and stuff, but just being more one-dimensional of a monster, it was less interesting to me.
Sure.
And I like the werewolf metaphors, but just it's not a stylistic to me.
Sure.
So I was kind of attracted, and it's that cool kind of nighttime creature, dark clothes and whatnot. I don't know. It definitely piqued my teenage adolescent interest for sure. Yeah.
Cool. So no, that's all fascinating. The truth of the matter is that when I first heard about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I thought the movie sounded hilarious. So I drug all my friends to go see the movie, and it was so disappointing that when I heard they were doing a TV show, I was totally disinterested. I had no interest in this TV show at all. And then it kept going, and I kept hearing good things about it. And so I backed up and started watching it when around season 4.
Oh, okay, yeah. When they're in college, right? And that's
right.
Right. Let's break down, because I want to say something about the beginning of the show. Yeah, we have Buffy in a biology class, and the teacher's named Dr. Gregory, and I just want to say I was heartened because she's not listening. There's a question. It's kind of comical. Willow's trying to mouth her the answer. Dr. Gregory knows this. He's the teacher who's been around the block.
Sure.
But at the end of class, he pulls her up, and I just loved it so much, Alan, because this is going against Principal Flutie, and he said, he basically said, you have a top-rate mind. I don't want to see you slack, and I want you to do well. And he said, let's make that principal eat his permanent record. And someone finally in this
somebody believes in Buffy. Yes.
Yeah. So I love. Man.
And it rips your heart out when he dies. A moment later.
Yeah, a moment later. Yeah. Yeah. So that was cool. And then he does. That's the kind of it's almost a stereotypical just kind of like network television too. Like set up scene, try to get a hook in on you, and then we're gonna do a quick fade to black. This guy's gonna die, and all you see at the beginning is some sort of insect hand, right? Like it's about the monster.
Well, there are two. there are two things that are always true of Joss Whedon's work.
Oh, okay.
All right. Number one is somewhere in the piece, he will have a line of dialogue that delivers thematically what he was trying to do with the work.
Mm.
And the number two thing is that if he ever sets up a relationship that is positive, somebody's got to die.
Is that his version of the red shirt?
I think so. And that's been true throughout, the entire course of everything he's ever done. And I want to point out that the thing that we didn't mention here that happens at the very beginning of the episode is Xander dreaming while he's sleeping in the science class.
You're right. Yes.
And so Xander's dreaming about, what it would be like if Buffy, liked him because he was like super suave and was able to kill vampires himself and all those sorts of things. And thematically, the line of dialogue that tells you what this episode is about happens way, way, way later. It's like in the third or fourth act. And it is Xander is bugged by Buffy not giving him the attention he deserves. Thanks.
Bugged by it, Alan. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I loved in the dream sequence. He's beating, just punching people. He's got almost like a Bruce Campbell one-liner in there,
Yeah.
And they're going to do some great passionate necking, but after I do my amazing guitar solo, right?
Exactly.
Guitar solo. So yeah, it's got all the tropes, right? Wrapped up in the little dream. And then in the dream, he's mouthed, "You're drooling." Buffy tries to wake because he's is it Buffy? Who's waking him up?
That's Buffy who's waking him up.
Waking him up. You're drooling. So he's actually in a very embarrassing pose.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how that one begins. And then shortly after, the teacher has his interchange with class and Buffy, and then he is knocked off.
Right. And so then the next scene is the gang at the Bronze.
Okay. Yes, they're at the Bronze, and this is one of those. I mean, again, we're just reaching to try to get David Boreanaz to be this romantic lead at some point, in my opinion, because and I think I do appreciate Xander representing a jealous friend, a jealous boy there, but he also on this side of history of my life, he represents a cynical audience. Like, oh, come on, look at him over there. Oh, Buff, little tank top. He's wearing one of those tight undershirts, and it's super annoys him. And Buffy goes over to Angel, and he's like, oh, you're cold. And he takes off his jacket to hand it to her. They just so happened to unveil the fact that he's got these cuts on his arms. Just
right.
So on the nose,
So on the nose. But this is part of what is bugging Xander.
Yes, it's bugging.
and, Whedon's definitely full of the puns. So the next scene.
Well, before that, I want to say that this is more to my irritation with the development of Angel at this point.
Oh,
is
go.
he doesn't speak directly to her and say, there is a vampire on the loose who happens to have a claw hand,
right?
And because he wants to decapitate or whatever. Like, he just says things in rather, vague ways, and it confuses her, and then he's, basically
right.
And it's also trying to make you feel like there's some unified villain in the episode. Like he referencing the same thing that took out the teacher? We find out no, he's not. But in fact, what he's referencing is really, when you compare it to everything else, is not the big bad of the show, of the episode. So anyway, now next scene. Go ahead. Take it away, Alan.
Okay, so the next scene is the gang in front of the school. Xander's hanging out with Buffy and Willow, and it's very obvious that Buffy is not into Xander, despite Xander's dream earlier. And then here comes marching in the Natalie French is her name.
The new teacher. She'll be a substitute teacher, played by this I believe South African or a South African actress from Zeta Vander is her name.
Okay.
I looked her up because she looked very familiar to me, but yeah, she's not she's in a lot of different things, but I don't know what I know her from. She definitely comes in, draws Xander and other males' attention.
Right. And so she walks up to Xander and she asks him a question, and Xander can't answer it because he's smitten. And then one of the other young men who is drawn to her is able to answer effectively, and just makes Xander even more bugged.
Yeah, and this is one of his kind of a male friend. I think his name's Blaine. He's got I believe a Letterman jacket on, and
Right.
And in the machismo game back and forth, he seems to have bested Xander. And his canon too, and his storytelling, so yeah, and he's going to go show. Yeah, I think that Blaine says, "Oh yeah, I can show you where that classroom is. It's right by the varsity field where I let her twice last year."
That's right.
Okay, all right, So yeah, so they head off to that, and then now in the next scene, there's kind of a jump to the cafeteria. Is that right?
Yes.
They jump to the cafeteria, which was terrifyingly horrifying to me because it took me back to school lunches when I was a kid, and I was just thinking about all the stuff we had got served, and at the same time, Cordelia comes in like an absolute privileged kid that we all remember. These kids that somehow buck the system. She says something ridiculous like, "My doctor prescribes my lunch and has it sent to me every day," and it gives her an excuse to open up the cooler, or the deep freeze, sub-zero freeze, or whatever in the kitchen there at high school.
Yeah,
and inside is
Dr. Gregory's headless body.
Yes, and I just kind of felt when I saw that, like, I've seen this a lot. I think, like, there was a lot of shows, movies, whatever in my in my background growing up where people like that's a great way to surprise an audience with a dead body, in a refrigerator at a school.
Yeah.
He's headless, yes, because he's got his lab coat on still.
Right.
He's in the fridge. He's chilling.
So he's chilling. That's good. I like that. That's funny. I don't remember what the exact next scene is. Is it Buffy patrolling because she's trying to find the vampire she thinks killed him?
Yeah. I mean, that's good enough. I think that is the cutaway. But she does go out into the world, and she's following after this vampire who's, as far as vampires go, he looks pretty cool. He's got this claw hand, and they're going after it. And she's kind of pursuing him on her patrol. Which, by the way, that's one of the coolest things, just phrases to me. It's like when she goes out, she's on patrol.
Yes, sure.
So she's out there on patrol and she sees him. They're going after it, and we can assume this is the one who's got an angel by the arm because of the claw.
Because of the claw.
And as he's fleeing Buffy, there is this what looks like, an innocent bystander walking, carrying groceries. The only strange thing to me is that this is a woman walking, carrying groceries down the street at night. Right. It's not something that I see a lot in my neighborhoods, but apparently that's what was going on in on the Hellmouth, the center of mystical convergence.
Right.
That vampire coming near that woman gets terrified, as if a it's kind of like I can imagine in the ocean or something like a predator fish trying to attack a very small fish, only to see a shark, and then they run away in terror. Then Buffy discerns from a moment of a head turn that what the vampire was afraid of was in fact Miss French,
right?
The beautiful new substitute teacher who's there to not only teach, and as we overlooked, to invite the male students to come to make some egg sacks after class for a science fair. So she's been invited boys to come see her. And so now, of course, she comes back and she reports to the Scoobies and Giles what she's seen. Do you remember what happened when she reports it to Giles?
No, I don't. What happened when she reported it to Giles?
Well, basically, Giles was like, "Oh, she's very lovely."
Oh, that's right. So he has the same impression of Mrs. French that everyone else does. That's right.
Yeah. And then, but she's Snoopy, and she goes around, right? And she does peer into Miss French's classroom because she's still investigating. one more thing that's just kind of cheesy, silly is that, on the floor of the classroom is still Dr. Gregory's glasses that are broken. It's like the police in Sunnydale just don't know how to do a crime scene or an investigation.
Right.
They're just, but nevertheless, Buffy goes by, she looks in, and Miss French, she's whispering to a male student in the ear, like helping or whatever. She has the spidey sense or praying mantis sense.
Yes.
Looking at her from behind, and then Buffy sees this very odd thing. Miss French's head starts turning around, sort of
Exorcist.
And the Buffy dodges and gets out of the way. So things are not normal. Things are
no, not at all. And while Buffy's in the hallway, this is actually a moment that I really enjoyed. Principal Flutie grabs her and says, "Oh, you saw the body. You have to go for counseling." She's like, "Well, I'm running late for class." He's like, "It doesn't matter. You've got to be counseled." And so Buffy goes to try to get counseled, and when she goes to the counseling room, Cordelia's already there.
Yeah.
And Cordelia has made the entire situation all about her.
Of course. Yes. Yeah. And Buffy's bugged by that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Buffy just has to sit there and listen to Cordelia and make it all about herself.
That's right.
And I did, like you, I did enjoy the no. The law tells us you can't follow this up.
That's right.
You need help even if you don't think so. Yeah.
So Buffy, based on this moment, intuits that Miss French is a bug, right? Like she goes and she talks to Giles, and in that conversation, she starts talking about, there may not be a monster that can spin its head all the way around, but some insects can. And this is one of the things that I think is interesting about this episode is I think it might be one of the only ones where Buffy kind of like does all the figuring out. Like she's the one who puts her finger on what the monster is, and based on what she learned from Dr. Gregory, she's the one who comes up with a plan for how to defeat the monster.
Right, and which maybe they stylistically did that to show that Dr. Gregory's right. I mean, unlike the, I don't even know, maybe I shouldn't even reference the movie, but unlike all the stereotypes of a blonde Southern California girl named Buffy who's popular and attractive, she's actually very, very, she's got a lot of moral depth to her, and then she's intelligent. Her issue is really just that she's got this extracurricular thing she's got to do.
Right.
Saving the world.
Keeping the world from being destroyed. So this is where Xander goes to meet Mrs. French after school.
But she says to him, "Hey, I forgot something or whatever. Can you come to my house instead?"
Right.
Just come to my classroom. Come to my house. And, if you go back in time to your adolescent self, most of us probably had a pretty teacher that made us feel like funny or like, whatever. We tried to flirt, or maybe we got clammy around because they might have been pretty or something to us.
Sure.
In those scenarios, the adolescent male, this is like the adolescent male's like fantasy. Like,
right.
Gosh, I'm getting invited over, but in the real world, parents are going to say, "Oh yeah, go to your teacher's house, no problem." Like this is like ridiculous.
Right. Well, I don't think we ever saw. Do we ever see Xander's parents? We do like years and years later.
Yeah, and I think the narrative, if I'm recalling, like is a kind of dysfunctional family.
Yes, very much.
But yeah, he's getting ready to go. Yeah.
Well, so he's getting ready to go, and Buffy's telling him not to because she believes that the teacher's a bug, and he's basically saying, "Hey, I know it's hard for you to believe that a woman finds me attractive." So this is Xander's big thing in the story is to kind of communicate, "Hey, I'm worthy of attention. You should be paying attention to me, and since you're not, I'm going to go hang out with the person who is paying attention to me."
Yes, exactly. And there's you kind of feel for him here because as you're watching this, you know that no one's really interested in him. This is a bad deal. You feel for him. Because you've all been in those positions where you like somebody who didn't like you back or whatnot. he's going into something dangerous. And they theorize, in that library, as they think about what this could be. And Buffy, as you said, was doing most of the work. They theorize that, this what like the praying mantis does is often, take its mate after mating and take it as prey.
Right.
There's that interesting thing where a befuddled Giles even remembers an old mate, an old friend who had PhDs and in entomology and mythology and so he's like, what? And he goes, bugs and fairies.
All right.
Idea is that there was this one creature that they talked about that was basically, a person-sized praying mantis that.
Yeah. He calls it a she mantis.
Mantis.
Right.
Or virgin.
Right. Right.
And there is that trope then. Usually it was back in the day, this is often the female, the trope of the female virgin was the prized possession in a film.
Yep.
And the word possession intentionally. I don't think we possess people, but that's how it was often used in certain films. And then there's the final girl trope in 80s slasher films where they were often the virginal girl, or the one who wasn't partying, right? The one who wasn't drinking.
Right.
And that was intentional or not, that's another conversation. So this monster must be looking for virginal males to do whatever they need to do.
Right. Bite off the head. So Xander universally has the best lines in every episode of Buffy, right? And the one that he has in this episode that I wrote down because I wanted to say it was he gets to Natalie French's house, and she's wearing a lovely dress that is a little bit more revealing than the kinds of things that she wears at home. And she says he looks at her, and she realizes that he's looking at her dress or accoutrement, and and she says, "Oh, am I dressed okay?" And Xander's line is, "No, it's a beautiful chest. I mean, dress."
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, and it's a good line. And then she's been making martinis, by the way.
Right. And she's going to give him a martini.
And he's like, "Yeah, sure, I'll take it." And he just gulps it down. And I imagine, when I first was watching it, he made a face. Like, I imagine he's never had a martini, but we also come to find out a moment later there's something in it. He passes out there, and she has no intention of seducing him in the way he imagined.
Right.
He'll wake up a moment later in the basement in a cage next to his buddy, Elaine.
Right. Somewhere in here, by the way, somewhere in this scene is where he delivers the line about being bugged, and it's what I contend is the theme of this episode.
Yes. Do you have the line?
I didn't write down the line. I just wrote down that it happened in that scene. Let's see, what did I write down? I said, I just wrote Xander is bugged! ! That's all I wrote down.
Well, it's Willow to the rescue. They know Xander has gone to go see Miss French, but they don't know where. Willow calls Xander to find out, what's going on.
Right.
And the Scoobies, they go to the school. They find Miss French's, on the computer. They say they go like searching for her background. I think this is the point where Willow and Buffy suggest that Willow is going to hack into something.
Yeah.
And Giles says something like, he says, it's a very hilarious line, but he's like, "Do I want to know what any of that, what that silliness means?" And they're like, "No, he knows she's doing something ridiculous and illegal.
It's all totally legal."
Yes. Right. Yes. And so he's like, "Okay, you don't know me. I'm leaving now." But They find she lives in the go, and that's like another kind of interesting where cameras. They think you knock on the door. It's Miss French's door, and the door opens, and it's an elderly lady.
Right.
And according to the record, she should be 90-some years old. Well, in fact, the elderly lady says she is Natalie French. She
right.
That is a substitute teacher for so many years.
Right.
And we find out
retired in 1972. I loved that line.
I retired in 1972. And then the praying mantis monster, the she mantis, the virgin thief, has assumed this person's identity.
Right.
And Now they've got to find out where she lives in actuality and where she's holding Xander and Blaine.
Right.
And to do that, and this to me doesn't make tons of sense, but to do that, Buffy goes and finds the clawed vampire.
Right.
I mean, they sniff her out, I guess, and she just kind of kicks his butt all the way until he shows her where he shows her where her house is, and that's how they find it.
I'll say this. So she used him as a radar, right? But to your point, I had totally forgotten this part of the episode. It was not part of my memory of it whatsoever until rewatching it the other day. And you're right; it doesn't make any sense at all. It's only there so they can have an excuse to wedge Angel into the episode.
Right. Yeah. And they're still trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
I mean, in his budget, you find out that he was like a couple 100 years old, and he has the emotional maturity of a teenager, not 200-year-old.
Yeah.
Powerful.
I agree.
Agreed.
I've been saying a lot of positive things about Whedon's writing. I'll give you a negative thing about Whedon's writing, which is that I think that a lot of his characters show a lack of emotional maturity. Even Giles, as mature as he seems to be at times, he definitely isn't as mature of a person as you would think he would be for his wisdom and age. And Buffy's mother certainly acts like she didn't mature in any kind of reasonable fashion in some instances.
Right. Yeah. I agree with you.
When Buffy's trying to figure out how she's going to kill Miss French, she has a conversation with Giles, and to figure out what this creature's weaknesses would be. And there are two things that are said that I think are interesting. The first one is that she can kill the creature with a standard slice and dice, is the way she puts it. But the other thing is that she can disrupt whatever the creature can sense by way of interrupting its radar by using some sort of sonar-based noise, right? Mm. And I felt like that was a funny idea, but it again felt kind of wedged in. He's just going to slice and dice her. Why does she need to deal with this audio thing?
To be clever, but there's more cleverness that's going to happen, because as they break in, and a fight ensues, and there's Xander has got a little plan. Blaine wonders if that plan's going to work, but when they come in, Buffy uses insect repellent,
right?
And which is fine. And then they use the bat sonar, which, to I guess, scramble her brain a little bit. But then ultimately, Buffy can slice and dice or hack her to death with a machete. That's all she wrote.
That's right. Well, the funny bit with the sonar disruption of the she mantis is that Buffy pops in a cassette tape. So, I don't think my daughter even knows what a cassette tape is right now, right? But when she hits play, it's just Giles delivering a lecture, and she's like, "What's this?" And he's like, "It's the wrong side." So she's got to flip the tape over in order to play the thing or whatever. And Buffy's full of those kinds of really good comedic beats. But again, I think this one was a stretch in terms of
something as annoying as bat sonar is. So is a middle-aged Englishman droning on and on. Right?
Yeah.
The teenage mind, perhaps. Right.
That's pretty good. I like.
Well, the next day, they, Buffy goes back to the classroom, and there's still Dr. Gregory's lab coat. She puts the glasses back in there. Again, where are the police at? Where's the research? But that's fine. The camera then pans to deep into the closet, and then there's some she mantis egg sacs, and one begins to kind of hatch. As I watch that, knowing this is a Monster of the Week episode, I don't know, because it's been a long time since I've watched these. I don't know that ever comes back.
It does not. I'm actually 99% positive.
As I say, I doubt it comes back. So you just wonder if they ended episodes open-ended like that, because it's the first season. You don't know.
What's going to happen. Sure. Well, I think there's that, but I also think that that's sort of the trope of the horror movie, right? You always do the horror movie with a suggestion that it's not really over.
Yeah, that's a tradition. I know you understand that tradition. So I was kind of thinking about that, wondering about if it fits into it or Yeah. Yeah. So all in all, personally, I see why the Fox would rank this so low. Even metaphorically, like what are some of the fears that are being elicited for the show? Adolescent male stuff to me is terrifying. I think there's the fear of procreation, sex that leads to life. I mean, I think there, especially in the 90s, the way that sex education happened. I mean, there is push-pull in our culture between safe sex and then the pull of abstinence teaching. And it was just like this pendulum swing of messaging. It went into high schools and on TV and the culture at large. And, and you would be, I think in the 90s specifically, and maybe still some today, although I think it's different. I think you would not be confused to feel like having a baby is a punishment. Given the alarm warnings were sounded about possible pregnancy for sex. So I think that is an anxiety that's wrapped up in something like this. I'm not sure there's much else that's going on. I think we're still trying to establish a bit of the early. I think, obviously trying to establish with Angel some stuff for the overall mythology. Yeah. Got a monster episode in, try to touch on vampires, but probably did the most to continue establishing Xander as a comedic piece.
I have to admit that I thought that it was interesting that they, there's a thing in television show development where producers feel that certain actors are able to carry an episode or aren't able to carry an episode, right? And when you have a cast as young as this one was, and as inexperienced for the most part as this one was, I thought it was pretty brave of them to try to put Nikki into the role of driving this particular episode. If I haven't mentioned this before, I actually know Nikki a little bit, not great, but we had a lot of personal and business interactions a few years ago, and one of his very first things, and for him to have this much to do in the episode, I think was very, very brave of them to try. And I think that he did I think that he does a spectacular job in the show overall. Like I totally buy him as who he's supposed to be. And I also think that it's interesting that he sort of comes across as not only the comic relief a lot of times, but also the guy who delivers like the line of wisdom a lot of times,
He's the heart of the student. He's the
right.
And later on when Willow needs to be stood up to, way later on in Family Double.
Yes.
The comedic relief, that he's the one who gets the funny sexual disease on his penis from some sort of. He's the one who loses an eye socket. Yeah, or an eye on his socket. He's the funny things happen. Right? That's what he.
Yeah, totally. So I think there's a lot to appreciate about this episode. I don't think that there are any episodes of Buffy that don't have something to appreciate. But I also read a little bit of a commentary about this one in preparation for our discussion today. And I did not find a single positive commentary about this particular episode. In fact, one commentator who's very popular said, if you're going to start watching Buffy, just skip this one.
Yeah, because I think that, I don't know if I'd tell people that, maybe just do full course credit, but
sure.
I don't think it advances much. I think when I was looking forward to it the last time we talked, I just remembered Xander being put in the place of the kind of he's being duped. He thinks that and it's usually funny. Yeah, I think if there's anything that's interesting to me is that it does capture that. I remember when I was in the fourth grade, we had a teacher. There was a teacher who the boys thought was an attractive teacher.
Sure.
And all it was is like, she made him feel like, she's cute. That was kind of thing, but more attention paid to talk about her. Then when I was in high school, I remember we had a student teacher for our literature class. And all I could tell you is she taught Romeo and Juliet, and then she taught the Odyssey. And I can tell you, I set the curve on the exam at the end of the year. And when I went to go get my grade from the teacher, the one who actually taught the class, she said, "You scored so high, I'm moving you to advanced placement English." And I didn't want more work. And I go, "Oh man!" But the reason why is I was paying so much attention, right? Like,
right. Sure.
and love to tell you that I was able to flirt with. Like, I think that like Xander, like he was competing with Blaine at one point in the episode, and they're even discussing how many times and with whom they've been in their sexual conquest.
Right.
Now, yeah, I've heard conversations like that. It's extremely stupid.
And by the way, very much like those real conversations, at the end of the episode, we find out that both of the guys who are bragging about their conquests are virgins, right?
Well, I remember in that class with that student teacher, who I was very focused on her teaching. I remember other boys were able to deliver flirtatious lines or what's the word I'm looking for? Witty banter. Yeah, that's a banty. Witty banter, and I wasn't really able, I don't think, to. So maybe I, can remember being put in that Xander position of, I'm a male, I have feelings, she's pretty, but I don't know what to do. He seems to know what he's doing. Oh yeah, by the way, we're all full of baloney. We're all just full of baloney. Yep. Scared what we're talking about, don't know what we're doing. So I thought that was true to life. Now I still find him liking what ostensibly becomes one of his best friends and having a crush on one of his best friends. That part is really true.
No. I mean, there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot to like about this episode, but there are a handful of clunky bits. The actual metaphor is pretty weak compared to most of the other Buffy, metaphors. Yeah. And I think that the biggest thing that this episode does from a continuity perspective is establish that Xander is perpetually going to be picking the wrong girl.
Yeah, that's true. That sounds very true. We can talk more about that in the future when we get there. But the other thing I wanted to just bring up at some point in this first season is the theme song. I have always loved.
Sure,
I like that theme song. I think it's cool, but in this version of it, it's either the first season, maybe the second season, there's a point when you're watching it and the opening credits, and it's the point where Willow does this thing in the light. You hear back that part. So you take it out. And also the font becomes better later on, where the actual logo of the show becomes a little bit right. I guess you are a guy who knows much more about fonts and style to me, but it seems more simplistic at first. It becomes a little bit more.
Yeah, they definitely at some point decided that they needed to go in a much more gothic direction with the style of the show based on all the themes and imagery that they were getting into. And frankly, I just think that they had such a shoestring budget, especially in the beginning of this first season, when they didn't really know if they had anything, and I think the network was just sort of throwing weed in a bone. Because he was a ghostwriter, and he had worked on a bunch of things for them that I think had come out well. So they were like, okay, well, we'll let you make this and see what happens. But I don't think anybody really believed in it until the ratings came in. Yeah. And even still looking back on it, I am blown away that this worked at all.
Yeah. I mean, because if you think about it, I know 1997 was a long time ago. We've come a long way with CG. For as small a budget as it had to try to show a full-grown praying mantis monster, it's a risk.
So as someone who's done a lot of video production and short films and that kind of thing, let me tell you the thing that I'm most impressed with about Buffy is, on that note, is visual storytelling. So the way that the classic way people think about movies versus television, this is not true anymore, by the way, because of Buffy. But the classic way people thought of movies versus television in the 90s was that movies were a visual medium and television was a talking medium. So what you would do on TV shows is you would get a bunch of people standing around and you do a bunch of headshots with people delivering dialogue. And literally, most of the television shows up until this sort of mid-90s range kind of material, you could understand any TV show that you were watching by just listening to it, because they weren't trying to make any of the bits clear from the actual action that you were seeing. They were trying to make everything clear from the dialogue, almost like a play or something.
The radio.
Yeah. And
like an old medium series,
Absolutely, absolutely. And so one of the things that Whedon decided he was going to do in this first season was communicate a lot of the sequences purely visually without a lot of dialogues. He gets a lot of credit for writing, great or witty dialogue. But the most impressive thing from a production standpoint is how many things he's conveying without dialogue.
Right. I said hush while you were talking, thinking you were going to go there, but hush will later become an episode with no dialogue.
Yeah. That's absolutely like a beautiful example, like a perfect example of it. But even in this episode that we're talking about, man, there are a bunch of bits that are like completely understandable without any dialogue.
That's a great driver to something I want to bring us back to, actually, a moment ago. Hear about this. Going to Xander and the Bronze, and you got some of that 1990s kind of alternative, I don't know what you want to call it. It's definitely alternative emo-ish sounding rock music being played there. Later, I think they do get some well-known bands to play, or at least to launch the single at the Bronx.
Sure.
I don't know if that band was well-known or not, but the sound was very reminiscent to me of certain things in the 90s.
Sure.
And Xander's walking around, bobbing his head, walking like by himself, but in a crowd of people, like looking for his tribe, his people.
Right.
Down with the music, and he's standing there listening to. He looks up, and he's still nodding his head at the singer and guitar player.
Yeah.
Like I shake, dude, like so. I'm cool. Nothing said, but you just get that Xander is not the coolest guy. Yet he's got a best friend named Willow and a building best friend named Buffy. So.
That's exactly right.
Well, if they say it once more of feeling, where do we go from here? I don't know what the next episode holds, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. I don't remember what the next one is either, but we'll find out next week, won't we?
All right. Yes. All right, my friend. Well, you take care and have a good one.
You as well, sir.